We're going to be looking at the properties of parallelograms. A parallelogram is a quadrilateral with two sets of parallel sides. Now, there are different properties of parallelograms, and those properties happen to be what defines a parallelogram as well. So the opposite sides of a parallelogram are congruent. The opposite angles are congruent. Adjacent angles add up to 180, and the diagonals bisect each other. So we're going to look at some of those properties and how we can use those in order to calculate different items. So example 1, determine the value of the variable using the different properties. So my two angles here are on the opposite side of each other. So they're opposite sides, or opposite angles. Not sides, opposite angles, so we know that they're congruent. So I have 4x minus 9 equals 3x plus 18. Just solving for my x. And x equals 27. Now it doesn't ask me to solve for that, what is the actual angle, so I just am solving for that x. Example 2, determine the value of the variables using the different properties. So I have diagonals here. So what that means when we say bisects, that means that this half is equal to that half. So my notation here is this is congruent to this. So I have 16 equals 2y minus 4. I'm going to go ahead and just solve this. So 20 equals 2y, divide by 2, y equals 10. Now the other diagonal, if it bisects, so this half is equal to the other half of 40. So I have 40 equals 2x plus 6. Subtract the 6, divide by 2, and x equals 17. Now remember, bisects. Bi means two, and if you think of like a dissection means you split in half. So bisect, we're splitting the diagonal in half, okay? And the last one here, determine the value of the variables using the different properties. I have sides. Opposite sides are congruent. So I have 10 equals 3y plus 1 minus the 1, divide by 3, y equals 3. Now my other half, or my other sides there, I really don't have to calculate a whole lot because it's already given to us. So 12 equals x. Now, we didn't necessarily talk about the angles adding up to a 180, so I just want to show you one as an example here. So let's say this is my parallelogram. So notice here on my arrows that are going up, they have 2, and that's to designate that those two pairs that are are parallel to each other, where these with the singular are parallel to each other. Just something notation wise to note. But anyway, let's say that this is 120 and trying to solve for x here. Well, these angles are adjacent, so they add up to 180. So x in this situation equals 60. If you would turn to the very last page, we have a quadrilateral hierarchy. I really like this because it shows some things on here for you. So we're starting off with a quadrilateral is a polygon with 4 sides. Then we're technically here discussing parallelograms. So on yours, you don't have color, so you might want to mark this, because obviously if you're looking at mine, I have color to designate different things. So it says here, on a parallelogram, opposite sides are congruent. So on yours, I would designate and put your markings in. So notice I've put my marking in as the opposite sides with 1 tick mark and 2 tick marks. And it also says opposite angles are equal. Again, I would designate that with your tick marks because they have it color coordinated, which is great, but I didn't print your copies out in color. So just something to know. So looking at this, we've talked about a parallelogram. We will be talking about kites, trapezoids, rectangles, rhombus, and squares. And these are all of your different quadrilaterals. And there is a hierarchy. And by the time that we get done with the whole unit, you'll have a better understanding of how these are all interact with each other and be able to understand this hierarchy a little bit better. The only thing I don't like about this, on the parallelogram, it doesn't talk about the diagonals, and it doesn't talk about the diagonals on really any of these, but it's still good information to have to kind of see how they all relate. But that's your start to our first special case of a quadrilateral, is talking about parallel